Hello, I'm Dr. Julie Fietta. Welcome to a special segment that was inspired by the heightened awareness of hot button topics on research in the media, things like gene therapy, COVID-19, aducanumab for Alzheimer's disease. One of my goals with this channel is to really help provide you with the tools to understand research and technology development, whether or not you're a clinician or a researcher. So the topic that I'll be covering today will most certainly take more than just this segment. It's something that's very large and ever-changing. And so we'll continue to follow up on this, but I just wanted to kick it off today. We're going to be talking about ethics in research. Now, it's important to note, especially for this episode, that I am an American scientist and my training occurred in both the United States and Canada. So that's going to kind of influence my experience and education on ethics and research. Different countries and regions have their own policies and regulations surrounding human research occurring in those locations. However, the topics we're going to talk about today are somewhat global because they're not rules or regulations in and of themselves, but rather these are some principles that were laid down in the 1940s that have since really influenced different human research policies around the globe. Following the atrocities committed by the Nazis in World War II, there were a series of 12 trials for war crimes. These occurred between 1946 and 1949. The first in the series of trials was called the medical case because 20 of the 23 defendants were actually doctors. This trial is recorded in two different volumes. In the second of which, on page 181, under the header Permissible Medical Experiments, are 10 principles. These should be followed to, quote, satisfy moral, ethical, and legal concepts. So these 10 principles have become better known as the Nuremberg Code. I've paraphrased these principles for the sake of clarity, but I encourage you to look back at the source document, which I'll link in the description of this video, if you'd like a deeper or more thorough understanding of the 10 principles laid out in the Nuremberg Code. So the first of these principles is voluntary consent of participants. It's your choice to participate or not participate in research, and it's a choice that should be free of undue pressure, influence, or coercion. The results of research should benefit society. The outcomes reasonably expected should justify the research process. In other words, the outcomes that we expect from the research should really justify the process of carrying out that research. Number 4, risks should be minimized. Number 5, research should not be done if death or disabling injury are expected to result. There are some risks that are simply not worth taking. The risks that research exposes participants to can't outweigh the problem they are working to address. Appropriate preparatory steps should be taken to ensure safety. Those involved in the research should be qualified for the tasks that they are carrying out. Participants should be allowed to discontinue their involvement in the research at any point. And scientists must be prepared to end the research at any point if it becomes necessary to do so. I do want to take a moment to define a term that might be relevant for those watching who are dementia caregivers or caregivers for anyone with a cognitive impairment, and that is legally authorized representative. This term is defined by the Department of Health and Human Services as an individual or judicial or other body authorized under applicable law to consent on behalf of a prospective subject to the subject's participation in the procedures involved in the research. So this term might be relevant if your loved one is interested or willing to participate in a research study, but it's determined that they don't have the cognitive capacity to really think through the processes and implications of the study. If that's the case, the legally authorized representative, that may be you as their caregiver, especially if you hold power of attorney, might be asked to consent on their behalf once you've considered the study and determined whether or not it's appropriate for them. If this happens, your loved one may be asked to sign something called an assent form, and that's just to express their agreement or support with your signing the consent form on their behalf. So the Nuremberg Code really emphasizes the responsibility of scientists, clinicians, and experimenters to really uphold ethical practices when carrying out research. I also wanted to emphasize your role should you decide to participate in a research study as the participant, and that's really as a partner in the project. So don't be afraid to ask questions, to get in touch with the researchers and express any concerns along the way. I certainly can't speak for all scientists out there, but I can say for myself and for many who I was trained with, we got into research, we got into science and medicine to solve a problem that was affecting a loved one. So we're very motivated and very empathetic to the populations that we work with. Research is not an area where the end should ever justify the means. All processes and practices should be really scrutinized for ethical implications. And it's very important that all players, researchers, and participants be viewed as valuable and really worth both respecting and protecting. Please remember that nothing I say in these videos are ever intended to be medical advice or recommendation. I'm not that kind of doctor. Thank you for joining us for this segment today. Please like, follow, and subscribe.